What's up, everybody? It's Anthony from Calibrated Power Duramax Tuner, and with me I got Sean Lynn. Today we're kind of changing things up, all right? We're doing something a little bit different. We're not coming at you with a bunch of information, diving in like we do on the Diesel Insight series. Today, Sean, we're just having fun, right? We've got two vehicles we're going to pair with you. We have a 3.5 liter EcoBoost, which is Sean Lynn's personal truck, and it's a 20 model. Is that right?
Yep, it's a 2023 3.5.
Perfect. So we got a 3.5, and when we talk about these newer trucks, a lot of guys are looking into upgrading, okay? So, I mean, Ford has great brand loyalty from everybody I know who have had any of these trucks. And we've got a lot of guys who are like, hey, I've got a 5.0 or I've got a 2.7. You know, I'm thinking about upgrading to something a little bit newer. What are the options? Is it worth it? What am I going to gain? What am I going to lose from my previous model truck? So today we've got Sean's 2020 3.5 liter EcoBoost, which is all stock, right? Because previously you had some calibrations on it from Calibrated Power Duramax Tuner. And we have one of my friends, it is a 2014 stock 5.0 liter. And I will tell you what, Lynn, on the way here today, just driving it from his house, it was definitely a huge difference going back in time for one of these older ones. So we just kind of want to go over things. I mean, we're going to talk about how does the trucks drive? What are the creature comforts inside? I mean, obviously the first thing I see, we've got a giant stereo. We've got a big head unit compared to the little one with a bunch of buttons around it on the 14. So we're just going to dive in, tell you what's what, is it worth the upgrade, what you gain, what you lose, all that fun stuff. But Sean, why don't you kind of tell them your background, because you've been around diesel performance for a couple years now, right?
Yeah, I've had a diesel for about 5 years previous to this, and definitely learned a thing or two in the process, so yeah.
Okay, perfect. And so obviously we're driving a gas, it's a 3.5 liter EcoBoost, but you had a 2.8 liter before, is that right? It was a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, up until I started working here, I had a 2016 2.8 Duramax Colorado, and I tuned it since day one, and then had it for about 5 years. It was good to me.
Okay.
And then I just wanted some more room and a new truck, so that's why I started looking into the 150s.
Gotcha. Okay. So you're previously, you know, again, you come from that background. You're familiar with diesel performance. This is all, again, both of us, this is before we both started working here back in the time frame. So you were a customer at one point, and you had the 2.8, and what did you use it for? Did you tow with it, commute with it? Kind of what made you buy that truck?
The main reason I bought the truck is because I was looking for something that was fuel efficient, that I could still tow a decent sized load trailer with, and it did just that. Gotcha. It was fun to drive, handled well, had a good amount of power, especially after you tuned it.
Okay. And
the most I towed with that thing was maybe 7,000 pounds, so technically I didn't even utilize its full towing capacity.
Gotcha. Okay. So in terms of that truck, I mean, you talk about towing a little bit with it, and then in there you're talking about, you know, some performance modification. So the truck had a tune on it, is that right? And then if I remember right, you were one of the prototype models for our turbocharger, the DT44, which is, you know, now available. Is that right?
Yeah, I had one of the first few DT44s on there before we started calling it that, and then I had not the latest revision that we came out with, but one of the ones right before that. And it was definitely a big improvement over the factory turbocharger.
Gotcha. Okay. So you've got some background and just some insight for the guys at home on myself as well. I've been with Calibrated Power Duramax Tuner going on 5 years now. I had an 03 LB7. I have an 05 LOI myself currently. And in terms of the EcoBoost platform, kind of, you know, switching gears back to, I should say, the meat of the conversation we're going to have today, it's a matter of, I'm very familiar with the EcoBoost platform, and, you know, I have friends, family who owns it. Tim, the lead calibrator over at Calibrated Power Duramax Tuner, he has spent a lot of time in R&D on that platform, and I've been very fortunate to be close with how the development goes on. So I feel like getting the drive, whether, you know, it's a 16, a 20, I mean, some of the 21s as well we've cruised around in. It just gives us a good insight on how things have progressed over the years. Because, I mean, I don't know if you remember seeing those videos when the EcoBoost first came out. They had like the torture test videos. And it was like, man, granted, they weren't really comparing it to anything, but showing how tough these motors are. And I feel like seeing that kind of stuff is very cool, because it gives you, the end consumer, when, again, you come from a smaller Colorado or Canyon platform, I mean, at some point you were thinking like, hey, I want to upgrade. I think it's time for something a little bit bigger. I mean, you talk about you're redoing the floors in your house. I mean, 2.8 bed, it can hold a lot less than something like this can. So when guys are thinking about upgrading from yourself who has done it, what are some of the draws, or what draws you in, I should say? Like, you're going from something a little bit smaller, you want to improve, you want to upgrade. What made you lean towards this truck in particular with this motor setup?
Based on the fact that I tow maybe 2,000 pounds max, I have an older tracker fishing boat. I thought, well, I'd love to have a diesel, of course. I work for Duramax Tuner. I better like diesels. But I didn't need...
You better, dude.
I didn't need a diesel truck, so I started looking into the F-150s because I heard about the twin turbo setups and the 2.7 and the 3.5, and then I got really interested from there. And then the amount of room that these trucks have in it, it's comparable to like a mega cab Cummins where you just have a bunch of room in the back seat. The only difference is you can't recline the back seats like you can in that one.
No, I agree. And one of the things that I really love that they've done, I would honestly say it's probably got to be 17 plus, where they redesigned kind of the interior and the exterior of those, is the back seats on these are massive. I mean, that's one thing. Not in the back seat all the time, but it's nice to have that comfort back there. And just kind of our background, because, clearly you're a gearhead, right? You've had multiple vehicles. You like to install aftermarket stereos. So you're talking about, you had some stuff done. You had a turbocharger, you had tuning. I assume you had an intake on your 2.8 as well. So you're familiar with modifying. One thing that's nice about with these 3.5 liters is the freedom and the ability to upgrade. So I should say we're going to also talk about the 5 liter a little bit and what that has to offer and what tuning and intake modifications all entail on that. But with something like this, when guys think EcoBoost or any gas vehicle in general, like you're talking about intake, you're talking an exhaust system. What do you see yourself doing in the future, and kind of why would you want to upgrade the truck? With the upgrades available in the market space, what would steer you in the upgrade, or why do you want to upgrade the truck, I would say?
Yeah, there's guys out there that want to run a full tank of E85 because they want to get that octane level up. They want to get the power up so that you can really maximize the full potential of the truck. So you got everything from in-tank pumps, larger injectors, turbochargers coming soon here. I hear we're working on some EcoBoost turbochargers.
Yeah. As of now, I think it's the Garrett PowerMax chargers that are the option for these. But we are in development of those slowly. So, you've got a vehicle, we've got a handful of good, close friends and customers. So I know for a fact we'll be doing some testing on those. But so the truck right now your truck is 100% stock, right?
Yeah,
okay.
I haven't even changed the intake or anything on it.
Okay, so you've messed around with the tune a little bit, but for this comparison, going back and forth between the 3.5 and the 5.0, we have both trucks 100% stock. Again, there's no intake, no inlet pipes, there's no ethanol in this at all. I believe both vehicles, actually I did fill it up on the way here, both trucks are running premium fuel, so we just want to have the comparison be as close as possible. So after driving this, because I assume you've got some experience with naturally aspirated, gas vehicles. What are some of the driving differences and characteristics? Because you're the operator on a day-to-day application. What is it like comparing it to something that's a little bit different?
Yeah, so I've had V8 trucks, I've had V8 Chevys and Fords, and then obviously the 2.8 Duramax. My dad had a 7.3 Power Stroke, so I have an idea of how every truck drives a little different. He also has an 18 Cummins, so I got that as well. Driving between, for the whole video comparison's sake, like the 5 liter versus this, the 5 liter seems to have a decent amount of power when you give it heavier throttle, in my experience.
Okay.
And some people like that, some people don't. This truck is more immediate, and it pulls through and pulls harder throughout the entire range. Okay, from what I've seen driving it.
Okay, Sean. So obviously, as these trucks get newer, they feel a lot different. We talked about some of the performance stuff. We talked about our background. But on the way here, that 5.0 felt completely different than even driving in the passenger seat on this truck. So we know that the trucks both light pretty quick from a standstill. But I thought the steering in the 5 liter was a little bit looser. Granted, they're different trucks, I know, but how does the truck feel because we're on the back road right now, we're taking some turns. Is it steering tight? Are you pulling off to this side? Just how does the truck feel as a whole?
Yeah, that'd be a good comparison sake there. This truck feels good around the corners. doesn't feel like I'm going to go off the road or anything like that, like some of the older trucks I've driven, like that '05 Cummins we drove a couple weeks ago. I mean, that thing, we felt like we were going to go off the road just making turns.
Yeah, right. And because, I mean, granted, different steering and whatnot, but yeah, they're older trucks. They as you get up to higher speeds, and that's one thing that I really like about, I mean, it's almost everything newer now. But especially if you're a pickup truck, you're loaded down, or you got a trailer behind you, being able to stay in your lane, especially on small 2-lane roads like what we're on now, that's one of the key components. I mean, guys talk about upgrading suspension stuff. So, I mean, you want to keep that factory ride, which I think is key. But so the truck feels good. It's tight in the corners. What about like throttle response? Because right now it's 100% OEM premium fuel. Like when you tip in, is there any dead spots? How does the truck shift? Because you've got a 10-speed trans in this thing, correct? Is that, yeah, since you've got a 20?
10-speed.
Okay, so tipping into the throttle, we got a little room in front of us. Just freaking hammer down, dude. Well, how does this thing feel? Dude, you're freaking ripping it. Oh, man.
It goes when you tell it to go. That's the thing I like about it.
And the nice thing there is, I mean, or I should say, guys have common concerns about the 10-speed, but honestly, I think right there that just proves them wrong, because people like, oh, I want skip shifts. I don't want it to skip shift. I want it to go through every gear. But I think in terms of drivability and leaning into the throttle, I mean, you tipped into the throttle in a split second later, we dropped a couple gears, and then you could feel the torque throw you back in your seat. So, I mean, that's something nice that I think they've really figured out over the past few years, and having the 10-speed in there.
Yeah, and then when you add tuning on top of it, we can change that up and just make it drive better, have more power. Maybe the transmission shifts too soft for you. You can change it to aggressive. You can keep it mild if you want.
Yeah.
I like the 10-speed because there's more gears to get you up to the final gear ratio. So naturally, it's going to tow better. It's going to stay in the power band longer and just be nicer to drive overall.
And I think a big thing there also is highway drivability. I mean, you get cruising 70, 80 miles an hour, and even some of the more rural areas where guys call and say, oh, to keep up with highway traffic, I've got to be doing X amount of mile an hour. Having a transmission that can work very well with that, I think it's key. And I could see where some improvements could be made for sure in the shift quality, but I feel like even from an OEM standpoint, it's still very solid. So I think that's something that's really figured out, that's dialed in. I mean, I really enjoy it. All right, Sean, so we kind of went over quite a few things. We talked about our background, we talked about the truck, we kind of gave you guys, the audience, kind of an introduction to this truck, us as drivers and enthusiasts. The main purpose that we want to kind of go about is this 3.5 liter, it's a 2020 EcoBoost F150, is going to be the main vehicle that we're going to compare to, right? The whole idea of this series is going to be comparing, in short, EcoBoost versus. We're going to compare it to 1500s, other F150s. We're going to compare it to Ram, Chevy. We're going to compare it to a lot of different things. This is going to be the main vehicle that we're going to use. Because again, pickup trucks, there's a lot of different motors, there's a lot of different options. It's a giant market space with huge aftermarket potential, and I think there's a lot of information that needs to be shared. So we're going to do what we can and share that information with you guys in the audience. So now we're going to get behind the wheel where I'm going to drive and you get to be the passenger and kind of nitpick and go back and forth with a 2014 5.0 liter F150. And we're going to see, Sean, if that extra displacement can kind of make up for the no turbochargers on it, I should say. So we're going to hop in that here in a minute and see what it's all about. That's all I got, dude. What are we in now? We definitely took a trip back to the past. This is quite a bit different than your truck. What are we in, Sean? I think we're in a 14 or a 1980. I don't know at this point with how dated this thing is.
We're in a 2014 5.0 F150 now.
All right, so I mean, we were just in a lap of luxury, and we kind of take a step back. I mean, enough shitting on the truck, but this is a very common year range and body style, I would say, for other ones that I see on the road. And what I think a lot of the customers, a lot of people out there, people who are watching this video, consumers like me and you, right? You had an older truck, you upgraded it, you changed it. I see a lot of guys who are talking about upgrading their vehicles, and they've got something along this 14, 11 plus model year range, and they're talking about, should I keep the truck? Should I upgrade it? I mean, I think almost every day we see guys on Facebook saying, thinking about upgrading, what's it worth? So I think that driving this truck, feeling the comparison, and then driving yours as well, it gives not only ourselves but people at home kind of a, what am I getting when I upgrade, or what am I getting when I keep this? So let's just kind of start from where the truck's at right now. Again, it's a stock 2014 with a 5.0, and it's a lot different, but it's very similar in the sense of they're F-150s, but I mean, like, the interior is different. It's been rattling for the past 20 minutes, and I have no idea where this rattling is coming from. I pushed the buttons, I pushed everything. I got the center dash here. I mean, the radio's totally different. I don't think this has, like, the sound upgrade package. Like, I think you get a pretty better looking head unit for some of the upgraded ones.
Yep.
But I should say, as a passenger, I know you've driven in your truck a lot. I just got done riding passenger in yours. What's a couple of the first things that you're noticed when you take a seat in this truck?
Well,
other than the brake squeaking, what are you noticing?
One of the biggest differences is the more classic design, if you will, the smaller radio screen. It's got like a maybe 4-inch screen on here, and the other one has like an 8.
Yeah. Okay.
8 or a 9. It definitely, you feel the road a little bit more on this one. Naturally, it's an older truck with more miles on it. You're going to get that. The other truck's quieter, and the 15 and newer F-150s, they went to aluminum bodies as well, so that's another big change.
Okay. So, I mean, touching on something like that I've got a Duramax myself. I'm familiar with the platform, but you drive your F-150 every day. What does that mean to an end consumer, and why would the body matter?
So a lot of guys, yourself included, buy older trucks because they like that style, they want to upgrade them, and what happens over time is naturally the thing's going to rust away, and that's why Ford switched to the aluminum bodies, because they want to keep the truck on the road longer. And I've seen some higher mileage F-150s, F-250s with like 300,000 miles on them. We got one in the shop right now, actually. Guy tows all around the country, and there's not a speck of rust or corrosion or anything like that on the body from what I could tell.
That white dually?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a big thing where guys, I mean, for most of us, pickup trucks or vehicles are an investment, right? It's something you're going to keep. If you're getting a truck, you're going to haul with it. You're going to tow with it. Maybe even take road trips. I mean, there's a lot of room in here, I would say. So having that extra, peace of mind of, hey, I bought this truck for this reason, and it's going to help me in this sort of way. So touching a little bit more on the bodies. So when was that year cutoff, I should say? So guys at home, and myself included, know what range to be looking for what's best for me. So when was that cutoff for the different bodies?
So the F-150 got an aluminum body in 2015, and then the 250 Plus has got it in 17.
Okay, so the F-150's got it first, and then the larger trucks got it a little bit later.
Yep.
You know if that was any reason, or they just kind of rolled it out with the F-150 first?
Naturally, the F-150 seems to get the new features first, just like the 21 F-150s right now. The new F-250s haven't been updated yet, so looks like they try it out on the 150s first.
Gotcha. Okay, perfect. And I mean, one of the things I notice, and you talk about like drivability compared to the 20, I mean, the truck seems fine off the line. We really haven't had a lot of open room yet to tip into the throttle, which we will here in a little bit. But I mean, it's quick off the line, it's snappy, it's responsive. I mean, I can kind of feel, I don't know where we're going. That was like 50% throttle change, and the truck was barely moving. So I mean, it's a much different platform, and I feel like, again, not everybody's about performance, and at the end of the day, that's not always the name of the game, but it's nice to know what you're working with. I mean, you tipped into your throttle, and the truck lit and just went off. So, I mean, seeing that is also very nice where, hey, when I want to tip into the throttle, when I want to merge on the highway, or when I want to pass somebody, you have that confidence in, hey, here's what the truck's going to feel like. Here's what it's going to do. I know that when I apply X amount of throttle, it's going to downshift, the chargers are going to light, and it's going to take off. For something naturally aspirated, I mean, again, you work within certain limitations, right? So, I mean, I think you need to understand and go head on into, I know what this truck's going to do. They're not going to drive like the others, but there should still be some crossover. How's the throttle response? How does the trans adjust when I go to downshift? How much throttle do I got to apply before it really starts to take off? And I think one thing that's nice about, for guys who do want to upgrade, that your truck is definitely more peppy and responsive in stock. They might be comparable in terms of peak power, but again, peak power is not always it's not always the main thing, right?
Yep.
So we've been cruising along for a little bit here. What do you think overall, how the truck feels and how it's driving?
In comparison, like I was saying before, it seems like you feel the road a little bit more, and the steering doesn't seem like it's as tight. And the throttle responsiveness, I'm used to driving mine now, so I can tell you it's very responsive, especially when you tune the truck. It's just an animal at that point.
Yeah, right. No, the tune makes a world of difference, and I think let's talk about performance a little bit. We'll talk about some of the other drivability points of the truck, but you go ahead and you talk about like tuning, all right? So tell the guys at home, for your 3.5 or 3.5 and 2.7s, they're alike. What does the what are the flashing options, right? Because we're familiar with like EFI Live on the diesels, HP tuners as well, but you can use a couple different other things to tune those. Is that right?
Yeah, we usually go with Easy Link on the EcoBoost trucks or HP tuners depending on the year, and both of those you have different options as to what you can do.
Okay. And Easy Link is something that we're very familiar with. It's using your smartphone, right? Yep. So something like this truck, it really doesn't have that ability, so you're limited to something like an SET. There's some other box programmers. I believe Edge even makes some calibrations for these as well. So you've also got to look at performance-wise. If you're a big gearhead, granted, there is still a lot you can do with this. I've seen guys put superchargers on these, and they absolutely blow the tires off. But for like dollar per horsepower, it's also very hard to beat the EcoBoost platform, because you run a little bit higher quality fuel and you run a tune, that's 100 plus horsepower almost instantly. Yep. As where something like this, if you just want to tune it and you have to be specific with your octane ratings, where you're running 87, you're running 93 or 91, and you're only getting, you're getting 40, 50, maybe upwards of 65 extra horsepower. As we're on your truck, the EcoBoost platform, you can blend fuel, right? So you don't have to have specific octane tunes. So kind of touch on that a little bit, Sean, because I think a lot of guys, like, when you're talking about aftermarket performance gas, ethanol is one of the biggest things that people hear about. But it's not as simple as just, hey, let me send you a tune. There's also quite a few upgrades that need to take place. So, talk about your truck a little bit. You want to run full ethanol. You're doing a laundry list of modifications. What are they?
Yeah, so if we're talking about a 17 or newer F150, a non-Raptor model, we're talking an intake pump upgrade, 1000cc injector upgrade, they're port injectors, and then we're talking an updated tune as well for that. Gotcha, okay.
So not as simple as just throwing in a tune and calling it a day. Like there's some aftermarket parts that need to take place. And with this one as well, like I've been looking at a lot. Again, the gentleman who owns this, he's looking into different calibrations, tuners and things like that. It's not as simple as just throwing a tune in there and throwing putting different fuel in there. Because again, you've got fuel pumps, you've got injectors, you're going to have other hard parts that definitely need to be adjusted for. And I think on these older trucks, sometimes that stuff can be a little bit more difficult, I would say, to do compared to the newer ones that are because you've got flex fuel enabled. And granted, you can a little bit with these, but not anywhere to the degree like you can on the EcoBoost platform. Another thing I want to touch on here is we're going to have a little bit of room here in a minute. The throttle response from off the line is very nice, but I want to see how it, because again, you lit on the throttle a little bit, the truck snapped and went, right? We already tested it a little bit. It's not the greatest, but in comparison wise, so I would say let's kind of see. I'll give you $1 if you can tell me how much throttle percentage I was there. So we were cruising about 30 miles an hour.
50% throttle.
That was 100% throttle, Sean.
What?
That was 100% throttle, and the truck really didn't go anywhere. Again, performance is the name of the game, but you can tell a night and day difference. Granted, these are older trucks. Difference between the 5.0 and then your 3.5, and I think it's important that guys know what they're getting into. I would say, because you talk about passing power. That's daily driving. That's creature comforts. Hey, when I want to go to pass somebody, am I going to be able to get around them? I've got a trailer behind me. Sometimes you got the wife, kids, you got family in the back, you got a boat behind you, you're going away for the weekend, you want to merge onto the highway, you've got to be able to do that. And it just, I mean, that was a little bit better on a downhill descent, but it still wasn't super great, I would say.
I'm really surprised that you're flooring it, to be honest, because I thought that would have been like half throttle. It's not downshifting, it's not grabbing, it's not pulling, like the 3.5 does.
And I think that, granted, you got to catch it in the right RPM band, but I think that's where a different transmission, such as what you have, comparative to the 6-speed. Here, we've got a little bit more real estate. Let's. I mean, it moved, it clipped along, it got up to not operating speed, it got up to the speed limit there, but it really didn't throw me in the back. It was basic, I should say. It wasn't impressive, it wasn't throwing me back into the seat. I really couldn't feel the torque. It was just, it's not a turbocharged vehicle, which I think that a lot of us are used to. All right, Sean, we've had a lot of drive time behind both trucks. Let's kind of talk. We talked a lot about performance, and I should say that that's not always the main option or the main goal here. Creature comforts, interior, we talked about the radio. I mean, that is a microscopic screen. Granted, I know it doesn't have the upgraded radio option, but I mean, there's a lot of buttons, there's a lot of knobs. I think on a truck like yours, it's very simplified. I mean, what are your opinions on the radio here and just the interiors overall?
Overall, it's not too bad. It's definitely a change from the 2020 that I have. Newer, they're going to update things, obviously. I'd say probably the biggest difference is the creature comforts. The newer trucks are going to come with more. The crew cab in the back seat is gigantic in that thing. You could probably sleep 2 full-grown adults back there.
Why are you sleeping in the back of a truck, bro? Just get a hotel room, dude.
Hey, if you're going on a road trip and you don't got time to stop for a hotel, sleep in the back seat.
Good Lord. I don't want to hang out with whoever you're hanging out with, man. I'm just going to get a hotel like a normal adult.
I went on a road trip to Wyoming one time, and my buddy slept for 18 hours in the back of the van we took.
Who's your buddy?
Sailor.
Oh my, all right. Anyways, back to what matters instead of your weird friends, all right? So we've got an extended cab. Granted, there's a lot of different cab configurations. I almost never see the newer trucks with an extended cab, but I mean, common on these is the doors rattle over time. The driver's door starts to sag. I mean, again, they're older trucks and they got miles on there, and that's one of the things you have to think about when you're talking about upgrading. I mean, I still cannot figure out where that rattling has come from. I think it's got to be down in these receipts, the cord. There's probably $100 worth of quarters sitting there. But I mean, I don't really think that these are all that bad. The air vents, I should say. But again, there's just some noise, there's some rattles. It's a 2014, right? And it is what it is. It's a solid truck. I don't want to kind of seem like we're knocking on it too much, but the truck is solid overall. It's going to do what you need to do, but there is definitely a lot of room for improvement. And I mean, comparing the two, right? If I'm going to come to you and say, hey, you're driving this truck, this is your day-to-day operator, would you want to hold on to it, or would you be talking about upgrading with kind of everything we've gone over today?
If I had the 5-liter of this era, or just even a newer one, I'd want to go to the EcoBoost just because of the better towing capability, performance, modifications you can do. You don't have to bolt a supercharger on it. You can flash a tune, change your fuel, and get that much more power. With this, you can, but you still have to do a lot more modifications and spend a lot more money to get performance out of it.
Yeah, and performance aside, also like the day-to-day operation. I mean, this is going to get less fuel mileage than yours truck. So I mean, you got to consider, like, if you're going to tow with it, you're going to drive it. Like, mileage, especially in today's age, I mean, fuel's not cheap. You want to make sure you're getting the most bang for your buck. I feel like the interior is definitely a lot more solid on the newer trucks. So I mean, myself, I might hold on to the truck for a little bit until I find the right one, but I would definitely be looking at upgrading, comparing the two. So I mean, overall, this is a solid truck. It does what it needs to. I mean, you can hear the exhaust drone. I like the exhaust note. If there's one thing I'm definitely a huge fan of, it's the exhaust. You can throw them on your truck. They still don't sound 100%, I would say. But I mean, even firing this up in the little burnout we did in the parking lot before we left, you definitely have that throaty tone, which is nice. But in terms of creature comforts, I mean, your suspension is a lot more tight than this one. The road noise is quieter, and I would definitely be possibly holding on to the truck, but overall looking to upgrade at some point in the future. Would you agree on that?
Yeah, and whether you get like a 17 or newer, they're all very similar. That's what I generally recommend, is a 17 or newer truck, because you have more capabilities in what you can do.
All right, that about wraps up today's video. Keep an eye out for more EcoBoost Versus. We're going to be doing one every month. And we're just going to, again, back to the beginning there, talk about comparing these to different vehicles, what you can expect, and just different things out of the market space. So I'm Anthony.
And I'm Sean.
We'll catch you guys later. Dude, what are you going over the line? Dude, someone's got to turn left and they're just going to smoke your bumper.